Dr. Satya Bhushan Agarwal. He passed out of MAMC, which is one of the, very prestigious medical colleges in India. And once upon a time, I had also applied. I could never get through. But great that we have a doctor who passed out from MAMC and in the year 2006, and thereafter decided to do his MBA from IMT Ghaziabad in 2010. He is currently head of public health service consulting at IQVIA and has established himself as a seasoned strategy consultant with Deloitte, KPMG, to name a few. He also runs an NGO, Center for Social Development and Transformation, and we hope that he'll speak about it, tell us a few lines about it in the course of the discussion. On behalf of the IMT alumni community, which is also your community, Satya, I thank you for organizing this session, and I take the opportunity to welcome Dr. Rashmi Bharadwaj and Dr. Prashant Mehta for coming on to this meet and giving us their valuable time. I would like to hand over the mic to Dr. Satya after this, but before that, special note of thanks for Dr. Rashmi and Dr. Prashant. Maybe he'll join and I'll do that once again, because this is the time when we actually realize what is war. And this is the time when we have, as citizens, we have seen, war without the army. Because the war is actually going on where you are representing, the army today, and you're facing what you are seeing today is, and what you're going through on a daily basis. I can only say that hats off to the, medical profession, and thank you for all the things that you're doing for the community today. Satya, all over to you, and please take it forward from here. I'll go on mute from here.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you, Debashish. As I can see, Dr. Prashant has joined. So again, I would like to thank Dr. Prashant and Dr. Rashmi to take time out for the webinar today, especially for this topic where a lot of people have a lot of queries and we have received a lot of queries. So without taking much time, a brief introduction about Dr. Prashant Mehta. He's a gold medalist and a accomplished oncologist who has a lot of interest on COVID-19 and has done a lot of research. As many people in the doctor community also know, he is an accomplished musician, singer, composer, lyricist, and has recently signed a contract with Zee Music Company. One of his songs is also on Zee Music Company's YouTube link, where again, he's composed the lyrics, the song, and he's the singer as well. So, personality in his own right. Dr. Rashmi, she's a dedicated pediatrician helping people not only in terms of providing pediatric care to her patients, but also helping in organizing and arranging the medicines, oxygen cylinders, etc. in her local network for the past few weeks to help the affected patients as well as their families. So without taking much time, since we have a lot of ground to cover and we have received a lot of queries, I would like to ask Prashant the first question, which was there and coming repeatedly in the queries that we received. It is, how do we differentiate between a normal cold and cough versus COVID-19? As in, when should a person start suspecting that it's COVID-19 and not a normal cold and cough? For example, there's a very specific query which also says that there's low fever for 19 days, but the test is negative. However, still they are suspicious. You've done the test, and after you know that the COVID test has been negative, but you still continue to have fever. Prashant?
Thank you so much, Satya, and thank you for inviting me to this, esteemed, esteemed people from IMT, alumni actually from IMT, and I'm so pleased to be here in this meeting and this panel discussion. And your first question, how to differentiate between flu and COVID-19? So I will give you a very simple and straight answer. There is no way to differentiate. you can't differentiate. And don't, please, to everybody, my appeal, please don't try to differentiate between the two. From symptoms, you can't differentiate. It can just present like a normal flu. You won't be able to differentiate. But there are some more symptoms which can happen in COVID, which generally do not happen in flu. So fever beyond 5 days or 6 days, high spiking fever beyond 5 days, and also some shortness of breath, loss of taste and smell, significant loss of taste and smell, and some other features like diarrhea or GI involvement, gut involvement, that can happen with COVID-19, and it can also present with some atypical symptoms. Some people can present with headache and severe myalgias. Some people can have ocular eye involvement and conjunctivitis or skin rashes. Some people can have brain involvement, spinal cord involvement. All that can rarely happen. So first, my appeal to everybody, please don't try to differentiate. If you have a normal flu, what you label as a normal flu, people have a tendency to label it as a normal flu. Although there is no such terminology like calling flu normal. But even if you have flu-like symptoms, please suspect COVID, especially in this pandemic. The suspicion for COVID has to be very high. Anybody who has flu-like symptoms is to be taken as COVID only. Okay? I hope I have answered adequately.
Yeah, Prashant, I was losing you a bit in the middle, but I will summarize. So you're saying that one should not try and differentiate. You
should not try and differentiate. Yes.
Okay. And test is the only.
And especially in the first week, the symptoms are mild. People are generally less symptomatic. The symptoms worsen in the second week. Please be mindful of that. The first week you may just not feel anything much. The inflammatory phase, the hyperinflammatory phase starts in the second week, beyond day 6 and 7. That is the time when the risk is higher, and that is the time when mortalities and morbidities happen. Not in the first week generally.
So in that case, Prashant, what would be the ideal time to get a test done? Should it be in the first week itself, or should we wait for 1 week
if somebody is in the second week? So there are two scenarios, Satya. One is a person who has got exposed from somebody who is symptomatic. Somebody who is tested positive, like you have an exposure. You have had a close contact with a person who has a positive test or is symptomatic. So from then on, at least after 4 or 5 days, do the test. But if you have symptoms, you can do the test right away. No need to wait. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, if you are exposed, then fifth day. If you are symptomatic, then right away do the test.
Okay. That we should take, and this question is for Dr. Rashmi. So, what would be the additional precautions? We are wearing masks. Social distancing is something we are maintaining. Washing hands regularly, something. What additional precautions or measures should one take to Dr. Rashmi?
Hi everyone, and just a word of thanks in short for being a part of the webinar. See, I feel what is important for everybody to understand is even if you are carrying the virus anywhere in your body, it will not enter your body until you are touching your eyes, nose, mouth, the mucosal membranes, the openings. So one thing which I feel is important for everybody to understand is, along with whatever you are doing, you have to make sure that till the time you've not washed your hands well, or you are out in a public place, you've not come back home, you're not being able to change your clothes or wash your hands, please don't touch your eyes, don't touch your face, don't touch your nose, don't touch your mouth. One. Second, prevention, obviously vaccination. Along with all these three, you have to vaccinate. Whoever is eligible, please vaccinate yourself. That is the best prevention as of now, along with social distancing, masking, and washing hands frequently. Avoid going out in crowded places, obviously, but otherwise also. Just don't go out because you have to go out. Go out only in case of emergency. If you really have to go out, it is absolutely essential. At least for another 2 weeks or so, when we are running into this major peak of the pandemic. And never ever touch any part of your face till the time you have not washed your hands. No matter what you have in your hand, it will get in. It's not something, it's not like it will get through your skin. It will get into your body only if you have touched one of the mucosal membrane. So please don't touch anything. There can be a time when it's not possible for you to wash your hands in a marketplace or wherever, but don't touch your face. Come home, wash your hands, take a sanitizer or whatever, and only then do it. This is also a very big prevention.
Okay, understood. Anything beyond this, Rashmi? Because a lot of queries that also come to me also is that it's summers, you're wearing masks, so masks.
Sorry.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah. Tell me.
Okay, so I was saying that a lot of people in summers also complain that if you are wearing a mask in the outdoors, then sometimes sweating happens, so they tend to pull it down a bit, or sometimes it gets itchy. So in those scenarios, what can be done?
You have to just think about the fact that whatever suffocation, whatever discomfort that mask is causing to you, it is less than anything which comes in the next step. So it is absolutely not required. In case you have to, I'm telling you, you wash your hands first. Na? You wash or sanitize your hands before you get that feel to touch or to scratch or do whatever. Masks should not be pulled down. You pull down the mask. See, if you are in an infected area, there are so many social media posts also which show it. You pull down the mask, whatever was there on your neck or whatever part of your the surface which your mask touched. Now that mask, the inner surface of the mask, which is over your nose and mouth, is now touching that surface. You pull it up again. So all that is infected now. And you are actually getting the infection. Once you put a mask, it is like a shield. You cannot remove it unless you have washed your hands and you have. See, what I do, I don't know how far in from a medical point of view, but practically. The masks are like this. In case you really want to do something, you just take off the mask like this. Just remove your mask rather than pulling it down. Don't touch your mask. Don't pull it down. You remove your mask from one ear and then you can wipe your sweat or do whatever. But your hand has to be cleaned in all that process. If your hand is clean, you can just remove it from one side, put it over one ear, and then you can do whatever you want to in case it is too suffocating. But still, whatever all said and done, it is not recommended. You should not do it.
Okay, the next question, and this was for Prashant, is that once the test has confirmed that one is COVID positive, then how it should be handled? At home, and when should one start considering that oxygen support is required or hospitalization is required and further treatment is required with either remdesivir or the multitude of drugs that we've been hearing about? So how do we prioritize that? At what stage, what needs to be done?
So I'll just tell you the home remedies or home treatment for a mild case or asymptomatic case. But for a moderate illness where the oxygen has started falling, you have to absolutely be under medical supervision and consult a doctor, even if you're able to do it telephonically or online, whatever way, or on video. So for patients who have tested positive and are asymptomatic, they don't have any symptoms. That means no cough, no fever, no breathing difficulty, no severe symptoms, no severe weakness. All those patients don't need to do anything more. You just stay home, isolate yourself, and stay away from the family members and your utensils and whatever clothes you're wearing. Basically, you have to isolate yourself and protect the others till you are asymptomatic. And patients who don't have anybody at home, who don't have a caregiver, for them it becomes very difficult. So even patients who are minimally symptomatic and don't have a caregiver, they have to still be under medical supervision. So if you have a caregiver who is healthy and staying in the same house, then a home quarantine or isolation is feasible. For anything more than that, patients who have developed symptoms and have spiking fevers or oxygen below 94%, you have to have a pulse oximeter at home for getting home quarantined. So without a pulse oximeter and a thermometer, it is not possible to be in home isolation for COVID-19. So your oxygen saturation should be measured. If you don't have any symptoms, you feel well, then at least 2 times in a day you should measure with an oximeter the oxygenation. So you should use the oximeter on the middle finger preferably, and it should be warm surroundings, warm hand, and properly applied oximeter, and check the reading after it stabilizes for a few seconds, for a minute maybe, and let it stabilize, and check it and recheck it again. Recheck it once you have done it once, and do it at least 2 times in a day if you don't have symptoms. On the other hand, if somebody has high spiking fever, especially beyond day 5 of illness, and there is shortness of breath, or if there is shortness of breath any time during the illness, the oxygen saturation has to be immediately checked, and has to be checked at least once every 2 to 4 hours. So if the saturation is below 94%, that is the time when medical supervision is absolutely essential, and you have to consult a doctor. There is no other way about it. And also, because there have been situations where bed shortage has been there, it has been very difficult to find beds. So that is the time when your efforts to locate a center where you can be supervised medically should start, like a COVID care center or an oxygen bed. You can at least start searching for that and put in a request. So I'm not saying that everybody under 94% will have to be in the hospital, but at least they have to start looking for options. And anybody who has below 92 or 90%, that is the time when staying at home is very, very difficult to manage. So that is the time when institutional supervision and quarantine will be necessary, and patient below 90% patient will require some oxygen support. So consult a doctor if you have high spiking fever, severe symptoms, or oxygenation of below 94%, and isolate yourself at home. Apart from that, for fever, the only safe medication you can take yourself at home is paracetamol. Any dose between 500 and 650 milligrams, up to 3 times or 4 times in a day at max. That is the only medication you can take. There are some other medications, some antivirals which have been propagated, but those have to be taken in consultation with some doctor, at least an online consultation. So only paracetamol, and plenty of fluids, hydrate yourself, and rest. That's all you can do at home. 94%. Remember that.
But one question
94%.
here.
Yeah. Tell me.
Okay, but one question here: is there oxygen?
I'm not getting you. Your voice is breaking, Satya.
Air? Because we see a lot of
Satya,
people.
your voice is breaking. I didn't
Sorry,
get you.
Prashant.
Yeah.
I was saying that. Okay. Now can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. I'm listening.
Okay. So I was saying that, does oxygen support have a role to play in home care?
So it has a role to play where there is no institutional availability. It has a role because you might not be able to find a bed, find a place.
Hello.
Yeah. So I'm saying, Satya, it has a role when there is a crisis of beds, shortage of beds. You can't be, hospitalized. You're not finding a hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the only role. That is the only place of oxygen in home care. If you're not finding,
I understand.
you're not finding a center where oxygen can be provided under supervision.
My network is.
You can maybe turn off the video for a while.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. I understood. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm saying the only place of home oxygen and home treatment is when you don't find a place in hospitals.
All right. Understood.
And
Prashant.
oxygen is
moving
generally
on to the next
required
question.
below 90% when the saturation is below 90%. So if it is above 90%, then oxygen is generally not required. But yes, there may be other medications which may be necessary. Below 94%, there are some other medications which you'll have to take under guidance of a doctor.
Okay, got it. Got it, Prashant. There was also a lot of query around how to take care of newborn babies, how to take care of pediatric patients, children who are less than 12 years of age, especially if they're COVID positive. So, Dr. Rashmi, the next question is for you. That how do we take care of children and newborn babies in such a scenario, and especially children who are COVID positive?
First, we talk about care of children in general. During this pandemic, one, they have to stay at home. Second, all children more than 5 years should be trained to wear a mask properly. If you train them more than 5 years, they are comfortable. They will wear the mask properly, and COVID appropriate behavior has to be taught to them. For children less than 5 years, obviously, it is not that possible for them to train COVID appropriate behavior. Except for the mask, other things you can still train them. For real small babies, it is tough. If the family is COVID positive, usually in houses, especially in this wave, we are seeing that the entire families are affected together. The children and the adults are together. If it is only one adult, should isolate, should separate them from the kids. But if there are both the parents are infected and the kids are staying without a joint family support, it is very difficult to keep the children away from the parents. So the parents have to wear masks at all times. Kids can be encouraged, but yes, it cannot be 100%. Even while sleeping with the kid, especially newborn babies, while rooming in, the mother has to put the mask on. One. The other thing, if the child himself or herself is COVID positive, see, usually children are doing okay. They are doing well. They are not having much of problems. So what we usually recommend is only a paracetamol and supportive treatment. Most of the children are presenting with fever and mainly diarrhea-like symptoms, loose motion, vomiting, sometimes even without fever. So they have absolutely nothing except loose motion and vomiting. So we are treating only the symptom. We are giving medicines to take care of the hydration, to stop the vomiting, and to take care of the stools. That is all we are doing, along with paracetamol for SOS care. Obviously, they have to consult their pediatrician. In children, parents should not, and usually they do not, take a risk of treating on their own. But yes, mostly that suffices. In 2 to 3 days, the child usually starts showing recovery. But then the adults, since the adults remain infected for a longer time, they have to continue masking, and whatever social distancing or isolation they are able to do at home has to be continued. Questions about, can the mother cook? Can the mother feed the child? Can the mother serve food? All that depends upon what help they have. See, for families in which there are other caregivers, let's say there are one of the parent is infected, the other, ideally whoever is non-COVID infected should take care of the child. In case that is not possible, the mother can cook, can feed the child, breastfeed the child, and give normal feeding also to the child, can give food herself, because one, there is no option. Second, children don't do that bad clinically, that MISC and all that we hear of. In the third wave, they are more scared about all this. But as of now, in our own pediatric experience, we are not seeing children getting affected so much. The numbers definitely are higher this time, but that is because the entire number is high. It's not about the percentage has increased. It's not that there were only 20% children being infected earlier and now it is 40%. It's not that. It's just that the absolute number has increased because the number of cases are more. So there is nothing too much to worry about the kids as of now. But yes, you have to have COVID appropriate behavior. The more you can teach them, the better, because the third wave comes with the warning that it is going to be bad for the kids, because one, they are not vaccinated. That is one very big deterrent. Most of the things kids go along well with because they are the only people who are vaccinated. Adults are not vaccinated for those diseases. So that ways it is probably a little, maybe a little tough, but complications are rare. And the red flag signs are if the fever persists, high grade fever, that means a fever more than 101, 102 beyond the third day of illness. Usually kids with COVID positive start settling by third, fourth day. Their illness is usually not prolonged as in adults, which they usually get it till about 5th day, 7th day. Some are sick even in the second week of illness. Kids usually do well after that. But a higher fever spike, the child looking sick to the parents, as in less urine, less feed, any breathing difficulty, too much cough, any exhaustion in the child has to be taken with caution, and immediate hospitalization or help has to be sought.
Okay, thanks, Rashmi. That was very comprehensive in terms of the overall care that the children will need. One related question here, Rashmi, regarding vaccination for children. Are there any plans for rolling out vaccination for kids or children, and when can we expect that? Especially for children who are less than 12 years of age.
See, now the government of India has approved the trials for Covaxin in 2 to 18 years old. Stage 2 and 3 clinical trials have opened. But it is not before at least 2 to 3 months that we can expect the vaccines to be out. Ideally, in terms of research, if we talk, or in terms of the methodology we deserve, we expect not before 2 to 3 months. But let us just keep our fingers crossed and hope it comes as early as possible. The Pfizer one, they have in the Western world more than 12 years they have allowed. But yeah, in India, we have trials of Covaxin which have been approved recently. So maybe in a couple of months or 3, we can expect something for the kids.
Okay. Understood. Here, I would like to request all the participants to keep themselves on mute. I could see a few names and a few voices which were coming in between. So it would be really helpful if everyone can kind of keep themselves on mute. The next question or the next query that we received is for Dr. Prashant, that so once a person has recovered from COVID and he's COVID negative, then in that case, there are a few symptoms that continue to persist in the form of low-grade fever, or rashes, or sores. So when do all these symptoms which are happening even after recovery or even after you get a negative COVID test, when do all these symptoms kind of resolve on their own?
So COVID, the recovery, even after recovery, there can be some prolonged symptoms, and it can happen maybe in about 30-40% odd patients who can have a prolonged recovery period, and it can range anywhere between 1 week to 6 weeks. So it can be some prolonged symptoms can stay on, especially who have had a moderate to severe illness. So the low grade fever or asthenia or fatigue, which you called as post-viral asthenia, it can persist for many days. So it will take time to recover. It is not like a usual viral illness that you'll recover faster. There can be some residual weakness.
Okay, and
it is expected, especially in those who have a moderate to severe illness.
Okay, in that case, should one continue to seek medical supervision and any?
Yes. Everybody who has had moderate to severe disease will have to continue on medical supervision, and they are continued because most of these patients, they are either hospitalized or they are under medical supervision at home, or treated at home under medical supervision. So they do continue with the medical supervision even after that. In fact, many patients who have gotten discharged from hospitals, they continue to be on oxygen for a few days to a few weeks.
A follow-up question, Dr. Prashant, to this is that can a patient get infected with COVID-19 again once he or she has recovered? And if yes, then how much time gap is there between the second infection?
So the straight answer to that is yes, the reinfection is possible, but it is uncommon. It is about to the tune of 4 to 5%, and that is generally beyond 6 months of the first illness. and generally the reinfections are mild. This is what these are what the observations are, because we don't have data, a lot of data on this, because this is something new we have encountered. This is a new illness, and we are about more than 1 year now into the pandemic. So whatever data is there, it says that these reinfections are uncommon, and especially in the first 6 months, generally reinfections don't happen unless until somebody is immunocompromised, somebody who has a underlying malignancy or leukemia or is on immunosuppressive drugs. Those patients can have earlier reinfections. The immunity tends to last less. But generally, once you have the illness, I would say 6 months to 12 months is the time till that much time you have some immunity, some natural immunity to the illness. And the reinfections, if they happen rarely, maybe in 4-5%. They are generally milder.
Okay. So, Prashant, since you also mentioned about cancer patients and autoimmune patients, there was another question which was regarding what are the vaccines that are the vaccines of choice for cancer patients? What vaccines can be given to cancer patients?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And the straight answer to that is all the vaccines can be given to cancer patients. Either be it a mRNA,
Okay, so
mRNA
whichever is
vaccine,
in it.
or a live attenuated virus like Covishield, or a killed vaccine like Covaxin, or a dual vector vaccine like Sputnik. mRNA is Pfizer and Moderna. All of these can be given to all cancer patients.
Okay. And another question which was related to vaccination, because now vaccination is the hot topic. It was that suppose a patient or a person has taken a COVID vaccine. After that, he or she contracts the COVID infection. So the second dose needs to be delayed. But in that case, how delayed does it have to be? And does the regimen start again where the second dose will be counted as first dose and then it has to be a second dose? So what is the medical overall prescription around it?
Yeah. So your first question, this question is regarding the second dose, if I understood. The
Yes,
first dose
so
is
you
already
have
given. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I'll tell you.
So
I'll tell you. So for the second dose, there are two scenarios actually. One is a scenario where you're taking the vaccine from the government. So you'll have to go by the government regulations. So for present Indian government regulations, the timeline post recovery from COVID, the second dose is to be given at 6 months. So beyond 6 months, it was 4 to 8 weeks, then it changed to 12 weeks. Now it is 6 months. So, but scientifically, I'll tell you, scientifically, if somebody has had a mild or asymptomatic infection, post recovery or post getting a negative report or post recovery, the person can take the second dose anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks from recovery. If the patient has had a moderate illness, moderate means 90 to 94% oxygenation, little bit of oxygen requirement, but recovery within, let's say, 3 weeks or so. For a moderate illness, the vaccine can be given anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks of recovery. For a severe disease, somebody who has gotten on invasive ventilation or non-invasive ventilation, has required critical care support, the vaccine should be given at 3 months from recovery. This is science, but regulatory is 6 months. So somebody, when we have all the vaccines available in India, and we have a choice of buying the vaccine and taking, then the science is 2 to 4 weeks for mild disease, 4 to 8 weeks for moderate disease, and 3 months for severe disease. But regulatory from government is 6 months.
okay.
This is for the second dose. And now there was another question. You said that should the entire course have to be repeated? The answer to that is no. The entire course is not to be repeated. And another branch out from that question is, if somebody has had COVID and has not got vaccine, when should the vaccination start?
Yes.
So somebody who has had a mild or asymptomatic illness, 2 to 4 weeks. Somebody who has had moderate, 4 to 8 weeks. Somebody who has had severe disease, beyond 3 months, the vaccine. And taking from government, again 6 months post recovery.
Okay.
I hope
Understood.
now it is clear.
Yes, yes, that makes it very clear. But there is another question which was again related to vaccines, which was if there is a delay in the second dose, and that is something which is we are seeing very commonly now because of the shortage of vaccines or the vaccine centers are
Mhm.
being set up. So if there's a delay in the second dose of vaccine, then what should one do?
Then one should wait and take the vaccine whenever it is available. In fact, a 12-week delay is not a problem. 12-week delay is better, in
Again,
fact.
3 months.
Yeah, 3 months is not a problem at all. But
Okay.
but let me tell you, if it is available and you are able to take it voluntarily, then anywhere between 4 to 12 weeks is good. In fact, UK has reduced the duration now from 12 weeks to 8 weeks, and it's going to bring it down further because there is a surge of the B6117 strain up there in North England.
Hmm.
So in India, the logistics also. I hope you understand the logistics also come into play. So the delay is also logistic, not completely scientific, but there is science involved because people who have had the vaccine in trials beyond 8 and 12 weeks, they have mounted a superior immune response. So 12-week
Okay.
delay is
Okay.
acceptable. So you don't need to worry if you worry too much if the delay is up till 12 weeks for the second dose.
Okay. And what about the immunity of the body? Some people say that if you take the vaccine, then some people have doubt that it will lower the immunity of the body towards COVID. Is that a well-founded fear, or it's
Just take that thought in everybody should take it in hand and throw into the dustbin. There is no such thing. Vaccines are not immunosuppressive at all. They don't affect the immunity. The problem here is because there is such a massive wave happening of coronavirus that there are many people coincidentally who are already infected by the time they take the vaccine, and the vaccine will not work for somebody who has COVID. The vaccine will do nothing. COVID illness will manifest as per the natural history, as it is going to manifest in other people. So it can be severe, moderate, or mild, depending on how it would be without the vaccine. Vaccine is
okay?
not immunosuppressive.
Okay. So Prashant,
Yeah.
to kind of make it more broad and to address all the queries that we have received, are there any contraindications for vaccines? Any conditions where the vaccine should not be taken? Because we are getting a lot of queries which are saying, should we take vaccine if this is there, if this is not there? So to kind of make it more broad based, are there any contraindications for these vaccines?
The only contraindication is hypersensitivity, or having a severe hypersensitivity to the vaccine, or having a history of severe allergies. It's also it's not also an absolute contraindication. It is relative, but there is no absolute contraindication per se. Having a severe hypersensitivity to the first dose makes the second dose contraindicated, absolutely contraindicated. Okay, otherwise
And
everything else is relative, and it is at the discretion of the treating physician or a doctor.
okay, understood.
Yeah.
A question for Dr. Rashmi here. Dr. Rashmi, can lactating women and pregnant women, can they take the vaccine?
Now, lactating women can. Till about a week back, they could not. It is about the guidelines. The guidelines say now Government of India has allowed lactating women to be able to take it with consent. Means they have to be told that it can, you have to counsel them that they have to decide and they have to take it. But again, scientifically, there is no problem at all. They should go, they should take, and please take this word home. Don't stop lactating. It will do nothing to the baby, it will do nothing to you. Nothing will happen. Please don't stop breastfeeding your child. Don't stop lactating. It is not the right thing, because the harm which that will do is several times whatever anything else can do. In something as severe as HIV, we tell mothers to breastfeed. It's okay, because in a country like India, where giving proper nutrition to the child is such a big challenge, stopping breastfeeding is a crime. So please, as a pediatrician, I would urge to all those who are listening, attending this webinar, Don't be scared. See, it's not that things have changed in 1 week. There's nothing that a new vaccine has come which has become safer. So even if you've taken it, don't fear. Even if you are planning to take it, don't fear. Please don't stop lactating. As far as pregnant women is concerned, again, as per guidelines, it is not allowed till date. Tomorrow, what happens with the new morning we see, that we'll get to know tomorrow only. But yes, there are a lot of organizations, the FOSG, etc., the gynecologist organizations, which have given their view that it can be given to both pregnant and lactating women. But in India, as of now, for pregnant women, it is not allowed. For lactating, yes, the government has allowed. So please go and take your vaccine and don't stop lactating.
Understood. To summarize, Dr. Rashmi, as per the guidelines and also from the scientific point of view, it is absolutely pertinent for lactating women also to get vaccinated. There is no harm in getting vaccinated if you are a lactating mother. But in case of pregnant women, the decision or the government guidelines are that they should not be vaccinated. However, representations have been made and we could see an update in the coming few days. Is that a fair summarization of the
Yes.
overall?
There is already an update.
Answer?
Satya, there is already an update.
And what's the update, Dr. Prashant, in that case? Hello? Hello, Prashant, can you hear us? So I think there's some signal problem or some network issue with Dr. Prashant. But the last question to you, Dr. Rashmi, that would be regarding black fungus. So there's one last question regarding black fungus that we have received. So is it possible for someone to get black fungus if they are under home care and not under institutional care?
Yes, it is possible because these days a lot of home care is going on with everything, with oxygen, with steroids, with everything. The level 1, 2 of treatment, people are being forced to take at home because of lack of beds or lack of resources. So yes, it is possible. It is not that only an institutional, and in fact, what I personally feel is at home, there are more chances. It is tougher to manage a patient at home. See, the predisposing factors which they say, uncontrolled diabetes, prolonged oxygen therapy, plus we use concentrators are becoming like a home-to-home affair. Everybody, most of us have it. So the liquid which you have in the concentrators, that has to be changed frequently, at least 4 to 6 hourly. It has to be changed because that is what is the main source of infection. We know that fungus grows in moist surfaces. So it's like a moist surface which is causing moist 5 minutes. Yeah. Moist surfaces, sorry, I'm so sorry. Actually, doctors' kids are not used to work from home.
No, that's fine, Dr. Rashmi, please go on.
You corporates are. Anyways, so there are a lot of things which then predispose to something like a mucormycosis because we are at home, we are not even being able to know and take those precautions also. In the hospital setup, there is a procedure of everything. Diabetes, how much of control you are having of diabetes, there is no monitoring. We don't know what is happening. So it can definitely happen in home care also. It is sad, but it can happen. Baki, Dr. Prashant can throw light on this. He must be seeing a lot of mucormycosis.
Yeah, so I just lost my connection for a bit. So can you?
We are discussing on is mucormycosis possible even during home care. So I was of the view that since we are taking oxygen at home, we are taking steroids at home, it is not that it cannot happen at home, only at institution, but you can
So mucormycosis has come up only because the abuse of steroids That's what everybody feels. So if steroids are not, steroid is a drug which has to be respected. It has to be used prudently. So if you're not respecting it, you are taking it, abusing it, then mucor can happen. So how to respect it? You have to take it under medical supervision. You don't take it if some relative has taken it. Okay, my family member has taken it or my chachi has taken it. Let's take it. I'm sick now. So that is not the way to use steroids. You'll have to take it under medical supervision at the right dose, at the right time for the right patient. 3 rights: right patient, right dose, right time, right duration also. Let me add 4. So if these 4 are not correct, then you're bound to have toxicities, and mucor is one of those toxicities. Because there's so many patients being treated right now, there are bound to be a few mucormycosis coming up, especially those who have uncontrolled sugars, are immunosuppressed, have immunosuppressive conditions, or are on immunosuppressive drugs. And let me tell you, it's a very bad disease, mucor. So be very careful. Don't abuse steroids yourself. Take it under medical supervision at the right time, right duration, and right dose. And then mucor is highly unlikely to happen. If you follow these 4 hours, mucor is highly unlikely. It will never happen, in fact.
And one more thing, please take it under medical supervision. Now Prashant, what we are seeing these days is a lot of my patients, they are not ready to take steroids at the right time, at the right dose, and for the right patient also. So much scare has come with mucor that they don't understand that abhi to COVID will kill, later mucor will kill. So that balance has to be there. But you listen to your physician. That is our only advice as doctors. Please listen to your doctor. Don't question the doctor also then. Either you will ask your family members and take, or you will not even listen to the doctor and take. So both scenarios are dangerous. So now the time has come when patients are questioning, ki, should we take? And they are getting sicker in not taking steroids then at the right time. So this
I agree with you. Yeah.
With so many.
It has to be under medical supervision. Yeah.
So please listen to your doctor also. Don't be too scared. The medical fraternity knows how and why.
And now we have such an august audience of IMT Ghaziabad. Let me tell you, the doctors have no vested interest in prescribing steroids or giving you any medication. Doctors will not gain anything by harming you. Okay? Always remember this. In fact,
sure. Thank you so much, Prashant and Rashmi, for that view. Go on, Prashant.
Yeah, nothing. You can carry on. It's okay. Fine.
No, I think Dr. Prashant, that goes, without any question that, the doctors don't have a personal thing about it. And I completely agree to your point. And I totally understand that there are patients that you see who will say, my Buaji has taken it, so I should also take it, which is very, very odd. And I think you have a lot of patience to explain to these patients that, jo aap kar rahe ho, galat kar rahe ho. Please look after yourself by listening to your doctor much better.
मैं एक और बात बोलता हूँ, लेकिन जो मैंने देखा है कि ना, सच की मार्केटिंग नहीं हो सकती है, बट झूठ को मार्केट करना बहुत इजी है. मिथ को मार्केट करना भी बहुत इजी है, वायरल हो जाता है.
I know.
बस इतनी ही बात है.
That is perfect. But yes. When we lost you, you were also talking about one more point, which that's the reason I came back to the call, where you were, talking about the report or the analysis that has already come in.
Yeah. So the updated recommendations are, as Dr. Rashmi pointed out, the recommendations are already there now for pregnant and lactating women also. They are allowed to take the vaccine. And obviously with consultation of their obstetrician, gynecologist and doctors, they can take it. And there is also concern regarding clotting. Nobody raised that question, but I'll just answer because it's a common question. Yeah. So risk of clotting with the AstraZeneca vaccine. So 2 points. The risk as documented in UK was 4 in 10 lakh, 4 in every 10 lakh risk of clotting. So, but I just wanted to point out that taking oral contraceptive pills, many women use it. the risk is 10 times more. With oral contraceptive pills, everybody takes it. You know, you understand, I hope you understand oral contraceptive pills, everybody. And now in India, there is data today from Indian government that the risk of clotting with the Astra vaccine in India was 0.67 per 10 lakh, which was much lower than the UK study also. So 10 times lower. So if you understand this risk, especially in women younger than 50 years, 0.67 every 10 lakh. If you are okay to take that, then Covishield is a safe vaccine overall. The risk is very minuscule and much less than taking oral contraceptive pills. Now it is probably about 20 times less than taking oral contraceptive pills. And everybody takes it. OCPs are very commonly used.
And
True,
Prashant,
true.
one
In
thing I
fact,
would like to add, being a pediatrician, I've been managing vaccinations for the last more than 15 years now. The general public waits for the vaccination till the time the disease is there and the vaccination is not there. As soon as the vaccination comes to the market, everybody starts questioning. Everybody will ask कि vaccine ले लें क्या?
Yeah.
मैम जरूरत है क्या? ले लें
Agree.
क्या? मतलब
So
जब
when-
तक स्वाइन फ्लू का पैंडेमिक आया था प्रशांत, आई रिमेंबर दोस डेज, जब तक वैक्सीन नहीं आई थी, एवरीबॉडी वाज लाइक कब आएगी? नाउ फॉर इयर्स आई हैव बीन हियरिंग दिस क्वेश्चन, फ्लू वैक्सीन की जरूरत भी होती है मैडम क्या? लेनी है क्या? क्यों लें? You know, that psych is there. Vaccination, there should be, see, once it comes to the market, there is a lot of research which goes behind such a big thing coming to the market before it can harm anybody.
So when as a healthcare worker, I was vaccinated with Covishield, and my friends who are some non-medical friends, in fact, some friends related to my music, they asked me, why did you take the vaccine? You should not have taken. You have become a guinea pig. But now, when there is so much of mortality and morbidity happening with the COVID, now all my friends keep calling me कि मुझे वैक्सीन लगवा दो, आपके अस्पताल में कब शुरू होने वाला है? अब मैं बोलता हूँ अभी तो है नहीं. So now I think that vaccine hesitancy has probably gone down a bit because of the so much mortality and so much morbidity.
That's why, and a lot of doctors have been vaccinated. That is also like a motivational factor to the general
So now,
public.
yes, there is another question regarding.
Because Rashmi is vaccinated. अरे Rashmi ने ले ली. मतलब it's like no common man के लिए वही एक वो है कि doctors are taking it तो ठीक ही होगी. That is also true. But then everybody should take. That is the only prevention.
Yeah, agree. So another question regarding vaccine which everybody asks is, vaccine लगने के बाद मुझे COVID कैसे हो गया? ये बड़ी कॉमन बात है और सोशल मीडिया पे हर कोई डालता है मुझे तो वैक्सीन भी लगी थी फिर भी मुझे कोविड हो गया. अरे वैक्सीन का ऐसा कोई डेटा नहीं कि कोविड नहीं होगा आपको. कोविड फिर भी होगा, बस पॉजिटिव भी आप होगे, बट माइल्ड होगा. माइल्ड हो जाएगी इलनेस, और हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन, ऑक्सीजन रिक्वायरमेंट, वेंटिलेटर की ज़रूरत कम चांस है कि पड़े. ऐसा नहीं है कि बिल्कुल ही नहीं पड़ेगी किसी को. 100% प्रोटेक्शन नहीं है वैक्सीन से, बट 99.9% चांस है कि आपको हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगी और सिवियर नहीं होगी डिजीज़. फिर भी क्योंकि इतनी बड़ी पॉपुलेशन है हमारी, ऐसा ज़रूर होने वाला है कि कुछ ऐसे लोग होंगे जिनको वैक्सीन लगने के बाद भी बहुत सिवियर डिजीज़ भी हो जाएगी और वेंटिलेटर पे भी चले जाएंगे. उसको पूरी तरह से नहीं रोका जा सकता, बट अ वास्ट मेजॉरिटी ऑफ केसेस विल बी प्रिवेंटेड. वही वैक्सीन का काम है. यूएस में ये डेटा आ चुका है, अबाउट 5000 ऑड पेशेंट्स, जिसमें ये डेटा है कि जिनको वैक्सीन लगी थी, क्योंकि वहाँ बहुत ज़्यादा वैक्सीन लग चुकी है ऑलरेडी, आधी पॉपुलेशन को दे चुके हैं फर्स्ट डोज, 50% पॉपुलेशन यूएस की को लग चुका है. 5000 का जो डेटा है उसमें 5000 में जो हुआ जिनको डिजीज़, उसमें से सिवियर बहुत ही कम है, मे बी अबाउट 150-130 ऑड है, और उसमें से भी बहुत रेयर हैं जो मोर्टेलिटीज़ हैं. तो जब इतनी बड़ी पॉपुलेशन को कुछ लगेगा तो उसमें से बहुत स्मॉल एक नंबर ज़रूर निकलेगा जिसको सिवियर डिजीज़ भी हुआ होगा. तो ये एनेक्डोट्स सोशल मीडिया पे तो बहुत आसान है डालने, तो फेसबुक पे तो वायरल होंगे ही, बट आप उससे ज़रा परेशान ना हो, बस इतनी बात है.
Yeah, and now US is talking about doing maskless. What is your opinion on that, Dr. Prashant, Dr.
Maskless, yeah. So CDC ने भी बात
maskless from July 4th, I think, this year, right?
Yeah. तो उनकी population is small. It is easier for them to vaccinate the whole population. हमारे लिए it is very very difficult. इतनी बड़ी population है. सो इट इज़ गोइंग टू टेक अ लॉन्गर टाइम. सो अभी वो रिकमेंडेशंस इंडिया के लिए नहीं आ सकती हैं. और दूसरी बात, इंडिया में जो वैक्सीन्स हैं, लाइव एटेनुएटेड एंड किल्ड वैक्सीन्स हैं, उनकी जो एफिकेसी है दैट्स अबाउट 80%. वहाँ पे जो वैक्सीन्स हैं उनकी एफिकेसी, जो mRNA वैक्सीन्स हैं, जो डॉक्यूमेंटेड एफिकेसी है दैट्स अबाउट 90 एंड 95% के बीच में. सो उनके लिए थोड़ा शायद ये बोलना ईजियर है कि मास्कलेस हो जाओ. हालांकि वो भी पूरी तरह से नहीं बोलेंगे. दे वुड बी सर्टेन ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल हु स्टिल विल हैव टू रिमेन मास्क्ड. इट विल नॉट बी यूनिवर्सल. अभी भी नहीं होगा ऐसा. बट इंडिया के लिए बहुत डिफिकल्ट है क्योंकि क्राउडेड पॉपुलेशन में रहते हैं हम. इतनी मैसिव पॉपुलेशन हमारी है. हमारे लिए मास्कलेस होने में और कुछ महीने अभी बाकी, महीने या साल बोल सकते हैं. तो हमें वक्त लगने वाला है उस जगह तक पहुंचने के लिए.
Understood. Understood. So, thank you, Dr. Prashant and Dr. Rashmi. We have covered almost all the questions, and you have
I can see a question in the
comprehensively
chat
addressed
box.
them.
That
The
Satya,
audience
there's a
and the
question.
listeners who joined in, they benefited a lot.
Yeah, the question in the
There
chat
was a
box I
question
see from Noreen Bakshi. Does Covishield create blood clots in diabetic people? ऐसा डायबिटिक्स के साथ ही स्पेसिफिक नहीं है. इट कैन क्रिएट क्लॉट्स इन यंगर पीपल, यंगर विमेन. बट ऐसा डायबिटिक्स ज़रूरी नहीं कि डायबिटिक्स को ही क्लॉट्स हो रहे हैं, ऐसा नहीं है. मैंने आपको जैसे बताया 0.67 आउट ऑफ 10 लाख वैक्सीनेशंस, इतना इंसिडेंस है, इतना रिस्क है, जो कि ओरल कॉन्ट्रासेप्टिव पिल्स से भी बहुत बहुत कम है. तो रिस्क बहुत छोटा है. एंड वैसे रिस्क सड़क पे चलने में भी है. तो ये रिस्क अगर उठाना कोई चाहता है तो उसके लिए ठीक है. अगर वो रिस्क नहीं उठाना चाहता और वो सिवियर कोविड लेके वेंटिलेटर के लिए ढूंढना चाहता है तो वो उसकी मर्जी है.
Right, right. So, Dr. Prashant, since you broadly addressed the whole thing about blood clots, that it is the incidence per se is very low of 0.67 per 10 lakh. So, question has been addressed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time out and answering all the questions to the point. So, pleasure having you here. Thanks. 35 minutes to give, but he's stayed on for the full duration of 1 hour. So, we are very thankful to you.
Hi.
So, there's a question which says,
sorry
Go
for
on,
just
go on, Aryan.
interrupting. I would request everyone to switch on the video so that I can take a screenshot.
Okay, while we are doing that, on behalf of the IMT community and the IMT Alumni Association, I express my sincere thanks to Dr. Prashant and Dr. Rashmi for not just taking out time for a community, IMT community, and answering so many questions. I am not going to put Satya in the same category because he is now a part of our category and we are proud of it. So Satya will have a different.
So are we.
Thank you so much. But at this point of time, I, on behalf of IMT, I really have, the thing, I don't have words to express what the medical community is doing for people today. I have a few doctors who tell me stories which, are worse than what a war situation could be. I have seen a doctor who's my school classmate crying, because of what the kind of thing that we've seen. Hats off to the profession, the medical profession, for what they're doing for the community today.